Okay, good. Well, I'm calling in from Fort Collins, Colorado, so it's a little earlier for me, and you are the first group of people I'm speaking to today, so my voice is still warming up, and I'm still waiting for the coffee to kick in. But thank you for having me, Josh. Thank you for the invite. I'm a regular participant of 1 Million Cups Fort Collins, and Josh attended that a few months ago, and I started working with him. And so he saw this presentation at 1 Million Cups Fort Collins and invited me to Orlando. So sorry I can't be there in person, but it sounds like I need to make my way down there sometime. I've never been. All right. So today I'm going to be talking about Rev Zero Consulting, where through Rev Zero, I use leadership development to bring work back to life. And today I'm going to share with you a coaching program I've designed specifically for engineers turned managers. Now, the ask for you today is I would love any recommendations you have for turning coaching into a steady business. I have been doing this. I've had maybe a half dozen clients so far, and I've loved it, and I want to turn it into a core business of mine. And I'd also ask, does my message resonate with you? Why does it resonate? What aspects of it resonates with you? Now, the topic for today's presentation is a vignette of how great engineers become mediocre managers and how I help them to not be. Now, this has been a personal area of interest for me ever since my first job. I graduated from Texas Tech with a degree in mechanical engineering. So I've been an engineer. I've worked with engineers. Most of my managers have been engineers. And I was once a manager myself. I was once an executive. I've had bad bosses. I've been a bad boss, and sometimes I still am, unfortunately. And now I coach and consult in the realm of leadership development. And what I've learned throughout my education and career is that nobody wants to be a bad boss. Every bad boss I've ever met, they did not have ill intent. And maybe they're not a bad boss. Maybe that's not their identity. It's not who they are as a person. Maybe they're just growing slower than most, or they haven't had the opportunities to see good management at play. Now, I use coaching because coaching can kickstart healthy development and establish good management behaviors that last. Now, engineers turned managers have three things holding them back that result in them being labeled a bad boss. First, they approach management as if it's a logic problem. They rely too heavily on management by objectives, key performance indicators, OKRs, and all these other acronyms that we all love as engineers. And they keep managing the same way, or they read a book and they just copy and paste whatever they read about what Jeff Bezos does, and they try to apply that to their small engineering team. And that doesn't work. And so the cure for that, what I do with coaching, is I get them comfortable talking about behaviors, their own behaviors and the behaviors of those that work for them. And so then we approach each of their reports in coaching as if they're unique human beings. Imagine that. Second, they tend to focus on control and compliance, which results in micromanaging, failure to delegate, a dehumanization of the workplace. And in coaching, I help them shift their focus from controlling people, which might have been the role of a manager 100 years ago, to building in progress, to making progress with their work group for the benefit of the organization. Third, engineers try to do it all. They take on those new management responsibilities, yet they keep engineering. Their daily activities is 50% engineering tasks and 50% managing. And guess what happens then? Well, they get worse at both. So I help them shift from that transactional leadership mindset, the simple delegation, to transformational leadership, instilling people with purpose, giving something for them to work for and towards, and building in this idea that everything can get done, but they don't have to do it all. So the program I've developed is a 12-week coaching program where we start with the most difficult person to manage first, themselves. We spend 4 weeks on self-management, where we talk about strengths, personal development, goal setting, and habits. Then we spend 4 weeks talking about managing others, where they bring real issues and problems they're having, currently with their team, where we learn how to communicate well, how to do goal setting that works, give critical feedback to their team, and to navigate conflict. And finally, we wrap up with 4 weeks on transformational leadership, where they get a better perspective of the full leadership pipeline, what it means to be a first-time manager versus a CEO, the differences there, how to use their leadership skills to improve team performance, and then how to become a coach for their people themselves. Now, I start to see improvements almost immediately. As soon as we start talking about strengths and their own habits, they just kind of open up. It's usually the first time they've had a chance to talk about that. And the value of doing coaching like this is that it saves time. You get managers to build a foundation of good management in 3 months, not over 3 years. You increase productivity. You finally start to see that group performance increase rather than just this one engineering manager doing it all themselves. And there's improved retention, because people don't leave bad companies, they leave bad bosses. And a lot of the engineers turned managers I've worked with did not have a great track record with retaining their employees. Now, I do this because I believe in it. I believe that the only reason we continue to have bad bosses is because we don't support them. And when we do support them, I have no doubt we can create workplaces with no more bad bosses. So again, my ask for any of you that have experience building a coaching business, what recommendations do you have for helping me turn this into a steady business? And are there elements of my message that resonate? And I'd love to know why. And of course, referrals. Like I said, I love this work and I'd love to keep doing it. And if you want to learn more about this program in particular, you can scan this QR code and I will drop the link in the chat in just a moment. But thanks very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dain. Fantastic. I just love, and we already know because we've talked, but I love the no more bad bosses. I love that your approach comes from a place of good intention, right? That you assume people have the right intention. They're not just trying to be buttholes or trying to be toxic people. So it's just really cool angle, I suppose. So Eric's question is, how do you find your clients? Let's start with there. How do you find your clients?
Yeah, so far it's been mostly referral. So it's people I know. And so since I've been in engineering in that world for so long, I know a lot of director level folks, executive level people. And that's who I'm reaching out to now. My network, just reestablishing the old working relationships. And now that this is what I'm talking about, it took me a while to kind of hone in on the one offering. But when I bring this up, the reaction has almost universally been, oh, that's awesome. I need that. Or I know someone who does. So far it's been referral, but I'm starting to map out potential clients in the area, Denver, Northern Colorado, that I can cold call where I have no connections. And I'm a little apprehensive to see how that goes.
Excellent. Do you hire for just one or two? Do they hire you for one or two managers, or do you tend to work on retainer, like for all the managers in a certain company?
So far, it's been one-off. Certain companies have brought me on to do more than one engineer turned manager. I don't have a model put together yet to do their full leadership development, but that's what I would love to work towards.
Excellent. Rupert says the video game industry needs this.
Video game industry. Okay.
Yeah,
I know nothing about that.
He's the person to talk to. Please talk to Rupert Megnot about the video game industry, because he's right. A bunch of very highly technical, highly skilled people that need to get along and actually make good business decisions. So
interesting. Okay, cool. Thanks, Rupert.
Nima's question is, what experience do you have as a coach? Have you been trained as a quote unquote coach?
So my master's degree in IO psychology, there's actually a lot about coaching in that. I don't have the IFC certification yet for coaching, but I had a whole semester course on leadership development and the leadership pipeline, and that's what I built this around. And the two methods that I take from IO psychology to apply here is appreciative inquiry and then the action learning, so that they're bringing real situations to the sessions. But I think I need to have a few hours, like a few hundred hours of coaching before I can get some of those credentials.
Got it. Denny says, great idea. What's been the reaction from these people to you? So how tough is the buy-in when you work with an engineer? Because he says he finds that most problems they have are hidden by, their ego, and they don't want to admit they don't know. So how do you overcome some of those initial obstacles with people?
I haven't had to, and I think it's because I'm an outside coach. They can kind of let the guard down a little bit. I can also talk about my background, and so there's some credibility there right away, where I haven't had to break through or break down the barrier. And I've also positioned this when I talk to directors about who this is for. Sometimes they'll say, well, I've got this low performing manager, is this for them? And I say, no, this is for the person who's already the high performer in your group that you want to promote and prepare for their development. And maybe you want them to be a director 10 years from now. Coaching is kind of an investment and a reward. And so when that messaging is presented to the engineer, they're excited about it. They're not thinking they're getting a slap on the wrist and getting punishment and getting coaching to correct themselves.
Perfect. I hope everyone heard that, because that is a really unique distinction, that this is not something like you have to do. This is something you get to do because you are a high performer, because you are being rewarded, because your director sees potential in you. So good point. Mark has a bunch of things he wants to say. So Mark, why don't you head, instead of trying to type all this stuff, go ahead and unmute yourself and please share.
All right. Hi, Dain. I really appreciate your presentation. And I'm also a optical engineer by training that is now, doing management. And yes, some days I feel like I'm doing pretty well. Some days, not so well. I definitely think there's a huge need for, this type, of thing. I try to figure out sometimes how to do it myself with my own supervisors on the team. One question that just came up in one of the last comments that you made. I appreciate that. Yes, this is something that, as somebody is developing their leadership skills for the high engineering performer, that's maybe going to be promoted into management. But I think you could also position it for those that high performing engineers that were promoted into management that may not be performing well, to also position it as, hey, you're a high performer. We think you still have we think you have real potential to be a leader, but there's some skill development that would be beneficial. And and we acknowledge that we probably should have provided you this skill development 3 years ago when we promoted you into management, and we didn't. And so now on us, we're gonna go back and do the right thing, because otherwise you end up keeping somebody who has potential as a poor performer, and ultimately they're dissatisfied and they leave there, or you have those retention issues. And so I think there is a potential there for recovery.
Yeah, completely agree. And one of the companies I've worked for, they brought me in and we started at the top and we worked our way down. And so then the other managers were seeing, the high performers getting coaching, and then it became their turn. And so then that excitement kind of built, and they were participating as a 360 feedback participant for the other managers. So they kind of knew what was going on. And then by the time we worked down the list, every coach in the group, every manager in the group had coaching.
Okay, great. The other thing I wanted to comment on, and I'm kind of going to be one of those blunt engineers, in terms of your presentation, because I think, like I said, I think you've got, a great idea here, and at some point maybe, you and I could, be consultants together on something like this, because I think it's critical. The presentation to me, you mentioned a lot of engineers, when they become managers, do cut and paste management, and I'm guilty of that. When I first was promoted into managing a team of like 25 people and having to do performance reviews, at some level, your presentation, because it's a lot of words and it's a lot of tell me versus show me, kind of also felt a little bit cut and paste, there. And I think here is something, where we learned a lot that, the better way to coach and share is to show versus telling. And I think, if you could do more showing in your pitch, where you're sharing successful stories, and it could be personal stories. This was me, and this is when I learned how to do this, and this is how it transformed, there. And, if you can make it really personal, there, I think that you have a much better shot of inspiring, the people that you're trying, especially the engineers that you're trying to say, hey, guess what? Your bosses say that you need my help, and here I am trying to, help you. Gives you also some more credibility that you had to deal with these issues yourself. Because a lot of times in coaching, we're going to get to a point where maybe if we haven't dealt with something ourselves, we can't help somebody else move forward. And if you can show how you've moved forward, and learn from this, I think that'd be great.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, Josh, that's good for now.
Yep, perfect. Thank you, Mark and Dain. Carla's question, have you thought of doing seminars at universities like for MBA programs?
No, that's never come up. Do you have an opportunity for me?
So I am at Carnegie Mellon University, and I know that there are many engineers who switch from engineering and do an MBA afterwards. And I know that there are like seminars, and I studied in Germany, and I don't know, because everything is virtual now, you could even think of doing things abroad. And in Germany, at least, when you have universities, you always have seminars. It's usually from Friday evening to Sunday, so 2.5 days, where you have a group of 10 maybe. And sorry, I was walking a little bit. And they are there the whole time with you, and you can teach them. So it's kind of compact, but universities often have a budget for those things. So this might be a new way of using what you have and making something compact. And now that everything is virtual, you could even approach several universities.
Yeah, I like that idea. I do enjoy teaching as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Awesome, thank you. And to that point, Eric is asking, have you been able to standardize a lot of this information so some of the knowledge is the same, or do you tailor it to each different client?
I do custom coaching as well, but that's more at the senior executive levels, upper management. For this program, it is each week has a curriculum. And so I try to limit it because we do 1-hour sessions each week. And there will be maybe 10 to 15 minutes of education where we'll talk about the subject matter, but then we'll be talking about how it applies to their work. So the 45 minutes of coaching is then totally custom to them, but we're focused on that subject at hand. Everyone's got something to talk about when it comes to communication or habits or feedback to their workforce.
Awesome. Sean wants to know, are you coaching in person or just virtual?
So far, it's all been virtual. I've got my first in-person coaching just started up this month, but that's, one-on-one director stuff that's not this program. But this program, I feel is perfect virtually, because then I can get in the middle of their workday and kind of see how they're reacting in the moment and get an idea of how projects are going and how they're feeling about things.
Perfect. Make sure you save the chat too. There's a lot of really good comments, but I want to keep on the questions here. So Nima, you've got a question you'd like to ask?
Yes, observation/comment question, Dain. So a couple of things. I actually have a coach, somebody who helps me. And also, because I go to various different 1 Million Cups, I get to see different presentations, and I do get to see my fair share of presentations from people who are coaches. So there's an observation. One is you have to set yourself apart somehow. That is something that you're bringing to this that is so uniquely you that that they're going to want. Now, the engineering angle obviously is a definite, target. So that's great. But it's also, you see, like, that why I asked the earlier questions, like, do you have any like coaching experience? Say, okay, I've worked with these people, and then say accreditation, which I know is probably a very, very long process and all that. Like, it occurs to me that some of these people, like, I think most of these people, they have a system, you know what I mean? Like, they bring this system into it. And the system is that thing that is the thing that attracts, those people. It's like buying a product, like, oh man, I like that. I want that. I want that for our, you know what I mean? It's almost like setting apart. It's why they choose this coach over that coach, or this system over that system. And I think there are people in this group who actually they're experts in being able to make that differentiation and would know better than I. But it's just an observation to be able to set yourself apart.
Yeah, I like that. I am building towards the Rev Zero way of coaching engineers turned managers, and having this system that it doesn't always have to be me. I can have other coaches that I train them, and it's consistent. And so I could have a team of coaches, and if you can connect, if you can build that relationship with someone other than me, you can still go through my process.
Yeah, I mean, that's gold, right? That's your secret sauce.
Yeah. And then they're not shopping around and comparing and contrasting to another coach another unsystematized coach, just like me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Eric's question is, what does Rev Zero mean?
Yeah. So Rev Zero comes from document control. My background in projects and engineering, Rev Zero is that issued for construction drawing set. So you will have gone through revision A through Z in your design process. But then once you get to Rev Zero, you hand it off and it's ready for use, even if it gets refined later. And so Rev Zero is all about building that foundation, a deliberate, strategic approach to a well-designed manager. And so when they finish the program, they're a Rev Zero manager.
You mentioned you have to use the Norwegian keyboard to make the zero.
Well, yeah, because otherwise, depending on the font, it can look just like a capital O or something.
There's depending on if you've got Mac or Windows, there are different programs you can use so that like a couple of keystrokes will pop up that character, or you can even do auto change. That if you type like /0, it will convert it to the Norwegian O.
Yeah, I just installed the Windows keyboard pack so I can switch with Windows key spacebar to get to the Norwegian keyboard.
Okay.
Then I do it, but I like the auto correct. That's simpler.
I created, or I didn't create. There's a character called an interrobang, which is an exclamation point on top of a question mark.
Yeah.
And I created a little autocorrect function that if I type question mark exclamation point, it will convert to that.
Excellent.
It is clever. What's the competition look like? What are the other options for someone that they may do before or instead of you? And can you just talk to that a little bit about some of the other options out there? Because corporate America is rife with training and more training. How do you fit into that puzzle or that mess? Depends how you look at it.
Yeah, and in kind of my sales, my value proposition is drawing a distinction between training and coaching, because what I see at engineering firms or technical firms is the initial reaction is to send people to training, but then nothing changes. Like, there's no behavioral change from that. And in IO psychology, we draw a distinction between knowledge and abilities, and training is all about knowledge transfer. Your job is to absorb information, and what that turns into is anybody's guess. Whereas coaching is all about behavioral and performance changes. So there is new knowledge, but most of the time they have the knowledge, they just need to figure out how to translate that into behavior. And so I don't compete with training, because those are two completely different things. And most of the directors who hire me know that sending their people to training doesn't change anything. Giving them a book to read or giving them a textbook doesn't make them a better manager at all. They've seen that themselves. As far as other coaches, I haven't found anyone else at this entry point for first-time managers coming from engineering. Obviously you see coaching at much higher levels, executive level. And so if there's a connection with me, then I'll do that type of coaching. But I'm not trying to compare and contrast and compete with other executive coaches. I mean, there's other great ones, and it's really about who can you build that relationship with and who challenges you.
Awesome. All right. We are out of time for questions, so I'm going to send it over to Eric for our final question.
All right. Great job, Dain. And I know you had an ask at the beginning, but we have our own special question, which you've heard before, I'm sure. What can we as a community, specifically here in Orlando, what can we as a community do for you?
At this stage, referrals, and not just for who could use this, but partnerships. I love the idea. There are a few people who mentioned it. I think Mark, how could we collaborate as consultants on this stuff? I love the whole collaboration approach. And let me know how I can help you as well. So reach out, introduce yourself, let me know what you do. But when you're talking to people and they say, oh, I've got this new manager that I promoted from engineering, I want my name to pop in your head and you can say, oh, I know a guy. So if you're ever in that conversation, feel free to drop my name and share the revzero.org website.